Welcome back to Skill Up and Get Ahead, the show where finance, supply chain, operations, and IT professionals can learn how to skill up so they can get ahead professionally with free and almost free software that helps advance careers while at the same time enhancing shareholder value and cutting waste. I'm Jim Burke, and I'm here with Mr. Dean Curtin. Today, we're talking about something we've seen derail careers with software and consulting project proposals that never get approved, not because the proposals are bad, but because the presentation, justification, or pitching of the proposals is terrible. What I've seen work very well is a shift in the mindset. Too many people talk to the CFO in a way where they're essentially asking, can I have $90,000 for AI reporting? Can I have $40,000 for a metadata tool? That really ends well for anybody trying to get money because they really don't justify it. They essentially are begging and they don't really present themselves properly in the eyes of management. If you want a project to move forward, you need to think less like someone begging for money and more like someone who spotted an opportunity for the company.
My name's Dean Curtin. I've been in this industry doing this a long time, more than a decade in the Big Four, doing consulting, working at IBM on the technical side and various software companies. I've had to work with the profile that we're talking to today, that people want to make a change in their organization. They see the benefits professionally for doing so, and they see the benefits to the company for actually bringing in technology that's really going to add value and help them with the growth projections and everything they want. But a lot of times it's very, very difficult to craft that proposal to get the money to move your company forward in doing so. And so I've seen this profile, I've worked with them throughout my whole career in professional services and then also within my software consulting background. And I think, what we're going to share today is going to be very, very impactful.
Sure. And one thing to acknowledge right out of the gate, CFOs are overwhelmed with priorities and essentially they're pre-programmed to say no. IT is usually tied up keeping the existing systems even running. And without a thought out case for projects, even great ones get denied. So, Dean, from a process perspective, why do proposals generally fall flat?
Well, the first one we can talk about and back up and say you understand what the problem is at your level within a finance organization, and can you get over the fear factor of taking a risk and actually, you know, making a proposal to make a change that is gonna create value for your organization and the company as a whole. So once you find somebody that's willing to do that, understand what the benefits to their own career in doing that, then the next thing is you have to craft a proposal that's going to make sense, right? And then the proposal that you're going to craft clearly has to detail what the problem is, the current state, and then detail what you see the future state to be, and then add the quantitative benefits that go along with your vision, right? When you do
Mm-hmm.
that. That's step one. It's the quantitative value based on what the change is going to be in the end state, making that really clear what it looks like. Um, the thing is when you start bringing up new ideas that's going to change organization and organizational culture in a lot of ways, you really, really have to kind of boil it down that this isn't a technical problem we're solving, this is a business problem we're solving. And don't make it sound like it's a big technical project. No one in your department or within the ecosystem that you're working in is not going to understand. You're going to be relying on a vendor one day because the software and the capabilities and technology for the finance organization has really evolved where now it can be user owned. A lot of companies kind of pitch that as their number one point. We're a finance owned platform. Sometimes that's a case, sometimes it's not, but it is moving there at the end of the day. So the second thing is you can't make it sound very, very technical. And then you have to be realistic on time frames. So what is it going to take? What is the effort and what is the cost? I mean, those are the three things after you establish what the value is going to be. And that's how you want to craft these proposals when you want to bring them up above you and ask for money.
Sure. In terms of that mindset change, what I've seen a lot is I've seen, otherwise very confident people get timid when they frame the whole conversation around asking for a total amount of money instead of presenting the what it costs now and presenting the opportunity to be able to reduce that cost or reduce that risk. because the factors associated with risk. I think what works better, and what I've seen folks like you do very effectively with clients, is to say, look, this work stream costs this much money or has this much risk, and here's the proof. And then if you give me this much funding, I can take care of it by X date and put some skin in the game in terms of being accountable. That takes a lot of the risk off it for the CFO.
It does, and about being realistic on timeframes, cost, effort, who needs to be involved. When I come in, a lot of times I frame that because I've seen it so many times. I can actually position myself as a dream killer, right? So,
That's great.
as a dream killer, I'm going to say I'm going to be realistic on what it's really going to cost. And,
Sure.
and I'll come in and I'll actually review the contract and validate what it's going to cost because a lot of times you
Yeah.
don't see some hidden costs. I'm going to validate timeframes and I'll evaluate the people that are going to deliver it. I'm going to know what they've done in the past. Are they credible? And so these are all the things that I do as a consultant coming in. And I was just joking when I said I'm a dream killer, but a lot of times that is. I mean, there could be unrealistic expectations that companies have
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
I've heard that so and so did this at a lower price, but it all depends on the complexity of what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and, and that's where I come in and I help.
Sounds cool. So, next thing we're going to talk about, Dean, is you're going to provide us with the three main elements that are top of mind. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. Rapid Analytics is the fastest path to an AI reporting resume trophy that gets you the skills you need to advance your career, compensation, and not get outsourced. Rapid Analytics costs 44 times less than a full time equivalent and has a 39-hour ROI. It's also delivered risk free because we'll set it up and allow for free use of the software during the pilot, so you only pay if it works. Get Rapid Analytics or quit and find a company that has Rapid Analytics so you can achieve your full potential, get paid for it, and stay relevant in a changing world. And Curtin Advisory. Curtin Advisory is especially relevant to companies that are listening because he's got both the technical and financial skill set in order to be relevant to a world where you're going to apply resources like technology and financial skills together. Dean's a CPA. He spent time in the Big Four. He's worked at all the major consulting and software companies, so there's no better person available who can get you where you need to be efficiently. Dean, when you're helping people with proposals, what's top of mind?
Well, the first thing is like you have to know your audience, who you're pitching to, who can give you the money. You have to really understand who that person is and what makes them tick. Is there any commonality to the problems that they have based on what you're trying to pitch and what you're trying to solve? Sometimes it's a little harder of a selling job to do. So once you understand the audience you're pitching to, and typically it's the person above, maybe the CFO, maybe VP of finance, somebody that holds the purse strings to help you actuate the ideas that you have in your own department. Second thing you need to do is you need to have a clear understanding in a problem statement. This is the problem statement, and this is what I'm trying to solve. So the clarity of the problem statement, if it resonates on the people you're asking for money, and then they can put a dollar amount against it. The next point is you're going to say this is what the future would look like, and this is the benefits from getting there. So
Awesome.
it's very clear. It doesn't have to be a 20-page presentation. It can be typically like I would do it in 5 pages. Like those
Sure.
things. People you're asking for money have are busy people. They have their minds on other things and other priorities that are going on in the organization. And maybe what you're asking for is very very small in their mind, but still it's big in your mind, and you need money, right? So
Yeah,
that those are the points. A 5-page presentation covering those things is the way I would frame it. And then don't waste their time.
that's
Do
true.
do it in a half hour because they don't have the mindset for more than a half hour. And then before you actually make that presentation, find ways to stage it. Stage it through like ancillary, maybe, people that have the same problem, CC them
Hmm.
on it, show the fact that this is more pervasive than just your own problem, and
Good
create
point.
that environment before you go forward and really really ask for the money for the person that can give it to you.
Yeah. Other things that work very well too is if you're the person getting the funding, trying to find a vendor who will help you de-risk the project, perhaps, offering free pilots, free setup, or success-based payment on milestones versus somebody who's just a taker. It eliminates a lot of the risk professionally and from a money standpoint for the company. And then the other thing, which I'm sure you're going to get to at some point, is you have to make sure it doesn't add any additional IT overhead work or resources because they just don't have.
Absolutely. So a lot of cases you got to get IT involved, right? I mean, they're kind of a necessity. Even though they don't understand the problem you're solving, they understand technical architecture and what their job is day to day to support it. So if you want to de-risk a project going forward and make it easier for you to get the investment from above to help you achieve what you're trying to achieve in your organization, you got to include IT. And the way you include IT is you go through proof steps. You prove to them, even though they don't agree and they support a different type of technology, you have to get them on board, and you get them on board by using your vendor. The vendors will give you free resources if they think that you're a viable customer one day. And then you kind of leverage your vendors to give you things like, very tactical proof of concepts or just general demos. And then you get, the vendor's always going to bring somebody that talks about security concerns because every single time IT gets involved, if they don't understand the functionality of the problem that's being solved, and they try to dive down into things like architecture and do you have SOC 1, SOC 2, what's the security like, how do you set up users, they'll go to things that they know
Yeah.
without really understanding of the problem you're trying to solve. So really to de-risk a project, when you're working with a vendor that you think has a viable solution for what you're trying to solve, you ensure that they can bring forward that technical person that can come on the phone and get IT on board. Be getting IT on board in a lot of cases, a lot of it depending on how much money you're asking for. If you're asking for a lot of money, then you have to get IT involved. But that's the way you de-risk the project. You make sure your vendor is going to bring that person forward to talk about these technical aspects of the platform.
Other thing I think works really good is free pilots, free setup, success-based payment from the vendor who's going to do the work. These take the thorny bits right out of the process, which are all very relevant that any IT person or business person is going to care about. But it does lift them straight up out of that, getting into the weeds about things like security paradigms, which frankly have nothing to do with the business process you're trying to take
Really?
care of. It's just
Exactly.
an excuse of a comfort zone for somebody who doesn't want to be involved at that point. And then the other thing, the big one, as you said too, is you got to make sure you're not putting extra burden and IT overhead on those guys because they're already extremely busy.
Right. They're extremely busy and they have a skill set based on a platform that they've been supporting for a long time, or maybe they have a preference to, right? So if you're introducing a new technology, new vendor, a lot of times there's going to be pushback. And so even though you get money, a lot of times you're going to talk to whoever your funding source is, maybe the CFO, and they're going to say, "I'm okay with this. Go talk to the CIO, and he or she is okay with that, then let's take it to the next step." That's typically, in a lot of cases, how this decision-making process goes within an organization. So again, those are two key legs of the stool. The business money, the IT support function. And then the third one is really, if it's a really, really expensive project, then they're going to want to, then you have to deal with procurement, the third leg of the stool. And they're
Yeah,
going to want to go and do a competitive analysis, and it gets more messy from there. But
it can. And we're going to help. This is why we're doing this, is helping people to mitigate those things and cut down on and streamline the process for
yeah.
themselves.
Mhm.
So we're going to get to all those later, but let's first work out what a good proposal looks like that's going to go to the person with the money. So what does a good proposal actually look like? Are there steps or things that should be in every proposal to make it straightforward and easy to understand and come up with basically a recipe to do this, Dean?
Well, when you're going up above you and you're asking for money, you got to keep it really. These people are busy. They have other interests, other priorities that they're trying to deal with, and you're asking for money, change that you think is really important for the organization. So I would typically keep it for 5 slides. You don't need 20 slides, and anything that's not important, put in an appendix. Any kind of
You're
cost
right.
summaries that you did.
Hmm.
Start with an executive summary, and then later a problem statement, right? The problem statement, executive summary is what you're trying to do. Problem statement is why it's important to do it. So after that, if you get consensus that, okay, if the CFO, for example, hears, I've heard that before, it's been going on for a couple of years, glad you're stepping up and doing something. After the problem statement, then you kind of summarize that you actually have an understanding of the current state, the way the processes are working, the way the technology is working,
Mhm.
what the risks are, what the problems are, how long does it take to do it, and so it's you're kind of crafting what the problem is, but you're kind of leading into what you see the future being, right? The future state, and how
Yep.
you can simplify, how you can automate, how you can reduce costs in doing so. And then, so you get overview of the current state, your vision for the future state, and then there has to be some kind of a cost justification. And back to the three legs of the stool, like how much is it going to cost, what value are we going to get from it, and how long is it going to take? And then
Mhm.
you can quantify those three elements in your proposal. That's really key. But be able to stand behind the assumptions you make in each of those three categories, because that's where you're probably going to get drilled down on your assumptions and is it really going to cost that much and everything.
Yep. And it's really simply provided in front of somebody they can follow along. They don't have to do math. And one thing, I mean, you know this better than anybody else. When it comes to you're in a room, there might be more than the CFO sitting there. You may have a bunch of other folks who have not seen this at all of a sudden start asking for a demo. And I think you get some great advice here about show the movie trailer, not the movie. Meaning like 30 seconds tops, because the CFO doesn't want to see a full demo. And the person sitting there in the room just has to be satisfied they saw something. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. Understand their salient pain points, and you
Mm-hmm.
pick one or two of them, and you whet their appetite by showing how this works for those two pain points you have. And if we can solve those two critical ones, we're going to be able to solve the non-critical ones.
Great. You know what I found all the time when you do demos? You show them one or two things that you nail on the head. They question it thoroughly, and then they stop asking questions because you've earned their trust at that point. And honestly, you're not going to be in front of a CFO unless a bunch of other people have already QA'd your proposal and looked at your software. So he's trusting those people. They trust you because you earned it. Like I said, the trailer, not the movie. It's just a lot better
I
to
would
do
agree
it
with that.
that.
People are
Awesome.
busy.
The other thing I saw a quote on is you better, some people just really better understand this. A CFO's time is worth about $7,000 an hour.
Yeah,
You better not be fooling around with that $7,000 an hour because they are very cognizant of what their responsibilities are in terms of their time to the shareholders. You have to treat it the same way. So if you can get this done in 15 minutes, he's going to like you even better.
exactly. And the C-level executives trust their employees. I mean, otherwise they
Yeah.
wouldn't be there, right? I mean, they go through rigorous hiring processes with people with experience. So it's a huge trust factor until it comes to ask for money. Then there needs to be like one more level below that. But you're not going to get the CFO in demos. You might get them in the first 15 minutes, hear the pitch, and then they're gone and they trust the people underneath them. So
Yeah. The other thing too, I think is important is people just think that they do this and they're done, and the CFO is going to go, "Sure, here's a check." They don't, as we say, salespeople say all the time, they don't close. So I think the polite way to say it is, based on what you've seen so far, do we have your approval to proceed? Because you've already shown what you need to show. All you care about is getting the green light at this point, and it's smart to just wait for that uncomfortable silence because the CFO is thinking and then you take the instructions from there. Would you agree?
I would agree with that. Yep.
Yeah, and that takes practice and courage because I got to tell you, that 1 minute of them staring off into space thinking is uncomfortable, but you have to let them do that because they're thinking. And they may have some very good things to ask you questions about that would be in your addendum, as you mentioned, or they're just going to go, all right, you're good to go. It's not that much money. I'll just approve it. And it doesn't necessarily have to go anywhere else.
I was
Well,
found when a CFO comes to a demo or comes to a meeting, like a pitch meeting, 15 minutes, they always ask the question that you don't expect.
yeah, they're good at that.
They think higher than the people that you're working with to help solve the problem. It's
Yeah.
always that higher level question. And you step back and you're saying, wow, didn't really expect that, but that interesting why he asked me that. And then through the process of trying to answer the question, then you can go back to the sponsor and make them stronger when they're making the pitch from the CSO's perspective. So, but again, the CFO is not going to spend a 2 hour. I'm not going to sit in a conference room for 2 hours. Never.
That's it. So next we're going to talk about resistance from multiple approvals that you might have to go through with multiple people after you present to the CFO. But first, a word from our sponsors. I want to thank Dean Curtin for being our guest today. His background and skill set and experience with this process is essential. I would urge anyone listening to this podcast to go ahead and engage him regarding your next project because he can help you get it over the finish line versus you struggling. In Masterful Data, which is a free tool that automates the dangerous and manual job of reconciling changes in accounts, hierarchies, and dimensions, so you don't have to do that janitorial job anymore, and also so you can protect yourself from the data snake bites that end careers. It was never your job to reconcile data changes to do your job, so now there's no excuse not to use software that can save both your job and save the average company over $1 million a year in needless expense. Other software vendors charge many hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of dollars a year. Masterful Data, a patent pending SOC 2 certified product, is free, regardless of record count or users. So don't waste your company's money or risk getting fired with bad reporting. Get Masterful Data or quit and work someplace else that has Masterful Data so you could reach your potential.